NRL Round 10, New Zealand Warriors off the back of 3 straight losses up against the Flying Roosters. Let's take a look how this one's going to play out. Hey team, welcome back into the Warriorholic. Great to have the Hardy fans here. Seeing a few numbers drop off over the past few weeks as the Warriors start to put on some slightly dubious form. Bit of a shame, but I know the Hardy fans will still be here. I know we're going through a tough time, but take a couple minutes to reflect on what we were dealing with a couple of years ago. Dealing with players who didn't want to be at the club, guys dropping out of games after 5 minutes, blowout scores, just absolutely nothing to get excited about. While we haven't been winning, you can't really accuse the guys of not turning up as far as effort goes. You know, the silly mistakes, the penalties, yeah, we can get frustrated about that, but you can't accuse the guys of like checking out early or anything like that. They're still fighting to keep us in those games, and it's reflected in the scores. You know, we haven't had a blowout yet. Maybe you could argue that the Dragons was, but for the most part, we've been, one try away from winning most of these games, and we've been fighting on attack in the last few minutes and could have won them. So they're still sticking in the effort, so I'm prepared to too. I hope you guys enjoy this one. It's not going to be a real quick one. And just quick premise, I've had a really hectic couple of days, so I haven't had a chance to fully update the Warriors players' stats. The number of games will be accurate, and obviously the heights and so forth, but the rest of their stats, unfortunately, from last week. But what I've got up there for the Roosters is based on their current stats. So sorry about that, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of how the team and the lineups are tracking. So let's get straight into it. 44 games over the years for the Warriors and the Roosters. Surprisingly close, 22 to them, 21 for us, and 1 draw. Win this weekend could square it up, and that's quite surprising considering they're one of the more successful teams in more recent times in the comp. So glad to see we're still competitive with them. Last year, that was a pretty rough game in the wet in New Zealand, going down 14-0, a very hard watch. 20-12 loss, second time round over in Sydney. It's one of those games I thought we could have won, but for a couple of injuries, a couple of calls, couple of bounces of the ball. So we've been quite competitive against them over the recent times, but so far this season, the Roosters, I guess you could say, have been a lot more up and down than us. Their best is better than we've produced, but some of their worst stuff's worse than ours. So looking at the last 5 games, 3 wins and 2 losses for them, 1 win and a draw and 3 losses for us. So a couple of really big scores in the past 2 weeks, showing that they're really starting to click. Bit of a question mark over the one against the Broncos in the weekend with so many injuries for the Broncos, particularly Adam Reynolds. That's a huge loss for them. Guys playing out of position. However, they did it. They got up and they were clinical, and getting a win up there in Brisbane is not an easy task. That said, quite a few changes for their team this week, though those changes will only strengthen them. For us, we're pretty much a similar lineup. For today's review, I'm not going to get too much into reading all the particular stats. I might make a couple of comparisons here. So apologies to anyone who's listening on Spotify, audio only. You might not get as detailed feedback on both players as you normally would, but I'm in a bit of a rush to get this one out, but I still wanted to get it done on Teamless Tuesday. So we've got Chance there, 100 games up against Tedesco with 234. Teddy, coming off the back of not a great year last year, a lot of criticism. Wasn't quite delivering the same numbers he was used to. Would he make State of Origin this year? Did he deserve to make State of Origin this year? And I think in recent weeks he's really started to step up, find some of his best form, and prove that he's still got a lot to offer. 7 try assists, 7 line break assists there, showing that he's still delivering those key numbers. On top of some big meters, averaging 168 there. But Chance, still averaging, I think it's 265 his current running meters there, a little bit dropped down a little bit after that game in the wet on the weekend from the 288 we've got written here. But, he's still got a couple of the try assists and line break assists. So both creative fullbacks, very similar in a lot of ways, but you've got to give the slight edge to Tedesco, purely, given what he's delivered over the years. But on their day, I think that they're a really interesting matchup. Both very hardy runners, do a lot of work for the forwards. Turbo probably a little bit better acceleration around the ruck and still got pretty good speed over the first 20, whereas Chance is a bit more of a workhorse, struggling a little bit to get his ball playing going recently. I'm not sure that's necessarily all on him. I think he's getting a bit of sideways ball for a number of reasons, which is making it difficult for him. Teddy, on the other hand, really carving things up. So you got to give him a slight edge going into this. And unfortunately, if I'm honest, as we go through these man for man, there's not too many of them that I'm going to be picking the Warriors over at this stage. Going on to our left wing there, right wing Montoya. A lot of people calling for, maybe he needs to take a step down and refresh and cup, but we'll be sticking strong with the tried and true. Up against Tupou coming back from an injury. 126 games versus 248. But I guess when you get that far into your career like Montoya is, there's not a huge difference when it comes to the experience stakes and what it's actually going to deliver on the day. Size-wise, 7 centimetres taller Tupou, and Montoya's not small, and 10 kgs heavier, which is reflected in the running meters. 144 for Montoya versus 176 for Tupou. What do you got there? 2 tries for Montoya versus 5. Tackle efficiency also better there for Tupou. He's one of those guys, he seems to be around forever. Super reliable. Probably what we would like Montoya to be. I can't recall Tupou having a bad game. Not in recent times anyway. Very sound under the high ball, particularly being such a tall guy. Similar roles in hitting out that first hit up off the after the kicks. Huge body, very difficult to contain. You have 21 tackle breaks, but Montoya with 25 before last week's game. I think he had something like 6 tackle breaks last weekend, so he's getting up to over 30 now. Really need to see Montoya somehow ignite his game a little bit more. I'm not going to be overly critical of him because I think a lot of his frailties are coming from things that are happening around him. I'm not overly confident with him under the high ball at the moment, but other than that, we saw what could happen. We got a little bit of space on Sunday against the Knights. He did make some good meters here, and he showed he's still got a bit of speed, but pretty hard to tip against Tupou this week. Centre battle, man. This is going to be a very interesting one. RTS up against Joseph Manu. 206 games versus 167 for Manu. Size-wise, RTS giving away 10 centimetres, but similar weights. Both explosive, quick, but Manu in much better form, able to light it up, great distribution skills. Haven't got the offloads listed, but he's got quite a few. Man, this is going to be a real test of whether RTS is really suited for centre, particularly on defence. I feel like he will be a good matchup, though, because he is a very strong defender, very strong upper body. We know Manu's got a great fend on him, good swift legs, but he's got to deal with RTS's step as well. Running meters wise, RTS is contributing a lot more there at 185 meters versus 148 for Manu. Tackle breaks both well up there, 44 versus 51. Not too many people are getting more than RTS, so shit, we're gonna have to be very careful of Manu. Again, I can't give it to RTS based on his recent form. If he went over historical form, it's a really even matchup, but Joseph Manu on his day, one of the best players in the world right now, not just the NRL. Rocco Berry up against Suali'i. Interesting matchup. Look, does worry me a little, but I don't think Suali'i's played as well at centre as he has on the wing. I think he's much more better suited to the wing than he is at centre. We saw he was named to play centre last week against the Broncos, but he switched up and moved to the wing. I think he benefits from having a lot more space to run, not having to worry about his distribution. That said, it's going to be a real challenge here for Rocco, both in the earlier parts of their career, but this is one of the final parts of their career for Suali'i, at least for the short term, with them heading off to rugby union from next season. So 40 games for Rocco versus 54, both playing 9 games this year. 142 running meters on average for Suali'i versus just 85 for Rocco. 2 tries though for Rocco and just 1 for Suali'i. 12 tackle breaks versus 20. So they contribute in different ways, but so yet another height advantage here with at 1.96 m, 5 centimeters taller than Rocco, who's not a small boy at 1.91 m. Very similar weights. Another one people are calling for Rocco to drop out, but I'm still a fan. I think he'll get things right. Don't know. I mean, maybe he may benefit from a couple of weeks in Cup with a lot more space and time to sort of unlock his attacking abilities. I'm not sure, but I do believe Ali Lautea is carrying a bit of a injury at the moment, so I don't think they're going to be any rush to switch him out, but plenty of fans calling for it. Dallin up against Dom Young. Shit. Another really tough challenge for us. Dallin obviously much more experienced, coming up to his 200th game in a couple of weeks with 198 versus 57 for Dom Young, but what a huge unit. 2 meters, 2 meters tallest winger or tallest back in the comp, I think. I don't know if Saab would be 2 meters. He's another one who's pretty tall versus 1 meter 86, giving away 10 kgs as well, Dallin. Real challenge, real challenge. Interestingly, though, delivering not dissimilar stats with an average of running of 172 for Dallin versus 142 for Young. 5 tries versus 4, 30 tackle breaks versus 24. I would have thought that Young would have had a few more than that. 1 try assist, 6 line breaks versus 3 try assists and 8 line breaks. Both similar there, around 86, 87% tackle efficiency. Dallin, I think he played better in the weekend, stuck to his man better in defence. Hard to measure the running meters in that kind of weather. But I really feel like he's going to have to step up and meet this challenge. Otherwise, it could be handled a bit of. Otherwise, it could be in for a bit of a bath. We really don't want him jamming in and giving Dom Young too much space on the outside. Remarkably quick for a guy his size. Sorry, Dallin. I'm going to have to give this one to Dom Young at the moment. 5/8 Tamati Martin up against Luke Keary. Luke Keary announcing last week that this is his last season. He's an interesting one. You don't realise how much he's achieved. I think it's 3 comps he's had now, 1 for South, and the back-to-back ones here for the Roosters. He's played Origin, he's played for Australia. He always seems like a bit of an afterthought when it comes to halves, but he's done a lot more than pretty much any other half in the comp at the moment. So, yeah, he'll be missed by them. Be curious to see how they look to replace him. I don't believe he's on huge cash considering what he's achieved either, but not a huge guy, 1.79 and 85 kg up against, what do you got there, 1.81 and 87 kg. You'd say that Tamati Martin doesn't look as slim as him. Kerry, I hear them giving him shit on the radio that he doesn't even look like he does bench press with the smallest chest in the comp, but it says Sam Walker's probably quite a bit smaller again. What do you got? 82 games versus 213. So a lot more experience for Kerry, but even though Tamati seems to have been around for ages. 4 games this season versus 8. Average running of 84 versus 72. Not a big difference here, but 11 average kicking meters for Tamati Martin versus Luke Keary with 276. Again, another example of a team that shares the kicking round a lot more. 1 try, 1 try assist, 1 line break assist versus 1 try, 6 try assists, and 2 line break assists. Both relatively solid tackle efficiencies. I thought we put a little bit more shape together on the left-hand side. I thought Tamati passed a couple more times in the weekend. RTS passed a couple more times. It looked like a progression. Really hard to tell, though, in those weather conditions. I like that the fact that the Warriors are staying over in Sydney this week, spending the whole week together. Shitty weather all week and looking like it'll be a really wet track come the weekend. So probably a good thing we're over there training in the weather rather than being here in New Zealand in these tropical blue skies that we've got here in Kapiti at the moment. So I'm pretty sure it'll be pretty sure it's quite sunny out there in Auckland too. Shit. Cleary had a pretty good game on the weekend against the Broncos. Tamati Martin playing some pretty average footy, but for the Souths game, another edge to the Roosters here. You can see where we're heading, team. We're going to have to really step it up across the board. All 17 of our players to have a chance of beating these guys, if not stop them smashing us completely. SJ up against Sam Walker, 261 games versus 67, but Sam Walker's been in and out a little bit. He's a small guy, only 78 kgs. versus 91 of SJ. That solid package he's carrying around these days. 9 games for SJ this year, 7 for Walker. Walker had a really good game in the weekend. He's had a pretty good couple of days. He's had a really good couple of games over the past 2 weeks. SJ struggling a little bit. Talking to Daniel from Warriors Anonymous last night, got together for a bit of a review of the Knights game, and it feels to us like SJ struggling, that he's not seen the game with as much time as he was last year. So one of the things with SJ, I feel like the teams aren't rushing him as much, which you think would be easier for him because he has more time. But what it's doing is it means the defence is more set, and he's not easily making those breaks for the guys around him. So we saw a lot of nice balls to Jackson in the weekend, but both their edges and their centres were ready and just put shoulders into Jackson, and he wasn't able to break through at all. It's going to be a real challenge how he gets himself out of this funk, and whether it, there's all sorts of talk about SJ overplaying his hand, coming over to the left, disrupting our left. I don't think he's doing too much that hasn't been coached and part of the game plan. But when he hasn't probably trained properly with the team for about 4 weeks now, it's going to have his impact, particularly in such a key position. So, yeah, I think he's going to have, if we're going to win, SJ's got to have a far better game than Walker and Cleary combined. Whether he can do that, I'm not sure, particularly if it is a heavy track, but I'm really looking forward to seeing SJ hopefully hit his straps and put a lot of this criticism behind him. And to the big boys, Adam Fulner Blake up against JWH. Man, 2 very hearty young men. Jared not so young these days with over 300 games experience. Interesting size-wise. Man, I never really believe these heights and weights. AFB, they're being marked down at 189 centimetres, 123 kgs, versus JWH at a metre 93 and only 108. Find that hard to believe. They're both big boys, but they'll definitely come together. I can see that first kickoff, someone's going to probably get hurt. Very angry young man. JWH. I really want to see AFB get that anger back from a couple of weeks ago. He did his job. He worked hard in the weekend, but he just didn't seem to have that same level of anger. He wasn't running with the same level of speed. Maybe challenging in those wet conditions, but I would have thought having had 10 days off, he would have been a little bit more full on with his energy. Maybe just trying to pace himself out a little bit, trying to play bigger minutes. But what do we got here? 9 games for AFB this year versus 7 games for JWH. Average running meters 192 versus 92, which really surprised me. But I say it all again, AFB plays a lot more minutes than a lot of these guys he's up against. 33 average post-contact running meters for JWH. Honestly, I would have thought he would have had a little bit more than that. No tries, 7 tackle breaks, 1 offload, 94% tackle efficiency. So it just goes to show the stats don't tell the full picture. He has a huge impact on them. The aggression, he's their pack leader, their alpha male, that they're a very different pack without him in there. But statistically, if you look at that, much lower numbers than a lot of the props we've come up against in the past month. AFB still charging away the average 75 post-contact meters, 4 tries, 26 tackle breaks as of last week, so he's probably over 30 now, and 7 offloads. I do think they'll both set the tone for how this game goes. We're going to have to dominate guys like JWH if we have any chance of winning this. And I think AFB has to have a season-defining match. I say it every week, and he does to a certain extent. He plays more than 2 men, but I just want to see that angry guy. I want to see him smash people and really put them on the back foot. Not having Mitch Barnett in the front row with him, at least to start off, is going to be a bit of a challenge. And we don't really have any edge cover, so I don't know how we bring Mitch back into the fold. But we shall see. So looking for a bit of an even battle here, but hopefully AFB gets one up on him. Wade Egan up against Brandon Smith. This will be another interesting one. Brandon Smith going off with a calf niggle last week. You don't normally see people come straight back from that. I'm pretty sure it was a calf from memory. So there is a chance he may not play, but at this stage listed. Surprisingly, 137 games versus 116 for Egan. So it seems like, the Egan seems older, like he's been around for longer, but no, 137 games. You'd imagine with Brandon Smith, though, he's going to be getting up to around a 300 game mark by the end of his career if he can stay healthy. With the 9 games so far this season, 7 for Egan. Average running meters, I'm surprised this is quite even, 57 for Egan versus 61. Brandon Smith is definitely one of the players I'd associate with being a running hooker, sorry. A lot of those meters that he's getting are actually when he's playing lock sometimes as well, but he certainly busts his way through tackles, very high energy, but I don't think he's got the same levels of fitness as Egan. Egan seems a little bit fatigued at times, but he stays in games. You can see, you could see on multiple occasions last week that he was struggling to get to the ruck, Brandon Smith. I don't know if it was because of the leg, but he just doesn't seem to be the fittest hooker in the comp, but probably one of the most destructive. I do believe, again, this is going to be another sort of game-defining matchup. If Egan can start to find a little bit more space around the ruck, start using his deception a little bit more, somehow find a way from not to have to make 50-odd tackles in a game, he could be the one to unlock us if we can get a bit of forward momentum off the back of AFB. But if Brandon Smith is in a bit of a mood, he can be one of those guys. He's one of those guys that can take the game away from an opposition, so it'll be a very interesting matchup. On the other side there, Bunty Afoa gets a start up against Lindsay Collins. I don't mind this. I've always said if Bunty plays, I prefer him to start because he is really useful in the first 20 minutes. Great on his defense. I was really happy to see he got up over 100 metres, 107 metres against the Knights. It's been a while since he's been up over 100 in a first grade game. Coming up against Lindsay Collins, himself only averaging 94 running metres, sort of similar there to Jared Warrior-Hargraves. 39 post-contact metres, Bunty with only 24. Very different kind of players. Lindsay Collins is one of those big engine props. He doesn't play huge minutes, but he can if he has to. Can be very destructive. Bunty, we know he's a workhorse on his D, but it's the attacking side of things I really need to see from him in that opening stanza. Having that big body there is going to be really important up against a really solid pack, and particularly with Mitch out on an edge, you're not going to be able to take as many metres this week. Yeah, I've got to lean slightly towards Lindsay Collins, as annoying as he is. I'm assuming this is how they're going to line up with Jackson Ford on the right and Mitch Barnett on the left. So this is the way I've listed them. So Jackson Ford up against Angus Crichton. Arguably the form edge-back rower of the comp at the moment. He's playing outstanding, some of the best footy we've ever seen from him. Off the back of him must be getting his meds rights with a few mental health issues in recent times with bipolar and a few other things. But it's really good to see that he is back playing at his best. He seems happy out there, destructive, couple of tries on the weekend. I highly anticipate him making a return for the Blues this season. Jackson Ford, 3 penalties he gave away in the weekend. 2 of them were complete bullshit, I think. So I'm not going to be too critical on that. I think he's actually played really consistently. His numbers have been good. He's cut the errors out, but he's just not quite getting the timing right with SJ. So we haven't seen any of those line breaks recently, which I'd really like to see on the weekend. We're going to need it, but they're a really strong defending team, and Angus Crichton's no mug. Interesting, I had to go back and double check this size-wise. They're both basically 1.87 metre tall, and Jackson 101 versus Crichton at 102 kgs, which I don't believe. Jackson looks way bigger than he was last year, and he's listed at the same weight. Crichton looks huge to me. I would have thought he was over 1.90 m. Massive guy, massive head and shoulders on him. It's going to be a real challenge, but I do rate Jackson to match it up with him. He's a bloody good defender. He went, I think it was like 54 tackles he got through in the weekend, averaging 38 tackles a game, which is just 26 there for Angus Crichton. And it's interesting, if you look at a lot of these numbers, for the Roosters, they spread their workload really well. Ford's not running for massive, 200-meter runners like AFB. No one making the average 50 tackles a game like we're seeing from Jackson over the past couple of weeks and Wade Egan. So I think that's something we need to get a little bit better at ourselves rather than just putting all the workload through a certain group of players. Good luck, Jackson. It's going to be a tough one. Mitch Barnett up against Nat Butcher, both workhorses. Does Barnett play 80 minutes on an edge this week? That'll be an interesting one to look out for. Metre 87 as well, so he's the same height as both Jackson and Crichton. Metre 84 for Butcher. Doesn't seem like a huge guy, 97 kg, he is a big boy on normal human rates, but he has a tendency to look small amongst some of the giants out there. Another guy I wouldn't have thought had played 134 games because he's been a little bit in and out. Maybe it's because he plays off the bench a little bit and it's the stars in the starting lineup you tend to notice from the Chooks. But up against Mitch Martin there in his 152nd game now. Average running metres of 153 versus just 57. That's some of the lowest running metres for an edge who plays regularly in the comp, but he does a lot of work, averaging 40 tackles a game. I haven't got Mitch's average tackle there because I actually prepared him as a prop, so I left his prop stats in there. He's one of those niggling guys as Butcher you don't really pay too much attention to because he's, like I said, he's not one of those big names, but he's niggly, he works hard, he's quick across the ground with a smaller body up against Mitch Barnett, who is traditionally an edge, but spent a lot of time in the middle for us, so it will be a challenge for him if he has to play 80 out there. Probably shouldn't have too much trouble with it because he won't be running as many metres. Hopefully he can get a few tackle breaks, maybe even a couple of line breaks going through the line up against some halves on the edge there instead of running into props all day. So hopefully he can get a bit of an edge in this one because we haven't got too many areas we're ahead at this stage. Then we get on to lock. Annoyingly, Victor Radley back in this week. Up against Tohu Harris, 229 games for Tohu versus Victor Radley, 125. Man, I really like Victor Radley. He's one of my favourite players. I know he's capable of going over the red line at stages, but I love the fact that he's a small guy, metre 82 at 92 kgs, giving away, 12 centimetre, 13 centimetres to Tohu and a good 20 kgs, but he won't take a backward step. He's got so much of explosive power for a guy his size, one of the best tacklers in the comp as far as knocking people on their asses go. Big average running metres of 167, one of the leading runners, I would say, for locks in the comp. 152 for Tohu, but an average post contact of 58 versus Tohu's 41, so it does show his explosive power. Couple of tries, none for Tohu. Just 8 tackle breaks, though, which is surprising. Averaging 42 tackles for Tohu versus 35 for Radley. Tohu looking a little bit tired, probably a little bit worn out mentally. Do we figure out a way to spell him this week a little bit more, keep those energy levels up? Radley versus Walker is an interesting competition when it comes up to it. Both quite aggro guys. Walker sort of calming down a little bit in his old age. Shit. I love my man Tohu. There's not many guys I rate over him at the moment, but Victor Radley on his day is a very challenging prospect for us. So I'm going to call that one 50-50. Then we get onto the bench. Bit of a surprise for many of us. I mentioned last night that Jazz might be back in. Name to play, I'm not sure if he does. Webby likes a late change. But at this stage, we've got Dylan Walker, Tom Aled, Jazz Tavanga, Adam Pompey pops up again. So if you see this tonight, Team List Tuesday, jump on the radio and listen. I think it's tomorrow, Wednesday, that Sam Hewitt and Anthony Gelling will be interviewing Webby on running it straight. I think it's maybe 3 in the afternoon. I see a lot of Sam asked for people for questions on Twitter there or X. See a lot of people asking what the logic is behind having Adam on the bench and not playing him at all. Yeah, it's a curious one for me. I thought, last weekend when you've got the 3 middles on the bench, if you had 3 middles on the bench, and only Dylan Walker, You don't have that cover for the utility positions, but I think if Jazz is there at a pinch, he can cover lock, he can cover hooker, which means if you had to, you can move Dylan to the back line. So I'm not sure why we still need Pompey there. I've also noticed, I'm glad to see people asking what the idea is behind having Adam play in the edge or on the edge the other week in Cup. So a lot of questions around that one for me. I like Adam Pompey. He's a really solid player, but just very odd that you have a guy you don't even play when the other players are thrashing themselves out there. So whether he does actually play, I see they've got a pretty big bench there, named with Jacob Laban, Tane Tuapiki, Zion Maiu, Ed Cossey and Freddie Lussick. I thought we might have seen Freddie back on after a refreshing break there for unfortunately snapping young Elias's leg. But like I said, he likes a late change, does Webby. So who knows if that's who we have lining up. For them, Connor Watson, White, Lenu and May. Lenu coming back, Niggly, another inclusion. He'll be amped up after his 8 weeks on the sideline after that stupid comment he made. And Tyrell May having a really big impact in 2024. So we've got a lock, come hooker, an edge, and 2 props on the bench. For them, we've got the utility and Walker, an out-and-out prop and Ali, Jazz, middle of various variety, can cover hooker, and Adam Pompey, who knows. Shit. It's a tough one. I like our bench if we're in form, bar the question mark around Adam. Love him, great player, but I just don't see how he fits into a bench role. Geez, I'd much rather have Zion or Laban. Maybe Laban does come back in unless they genuinely do believe that Adam can spell Mitch on an edge there, because no one else can go onto an edge except for Tohu. So we're probably going to give this the edge to them on the bench purely on the Lenu factor. I just think he's going to go crazy. Hopefully not too crazy and doesn't go injuring any of our guys, or maybe ends up with 10 in the bin, which would be quite good. And I see, what's her name, is it Casey Badger, the young lady who had some issues in the weekend with the Tigers game, has been given our game. So there'll be a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes on her. So whether she can handle the big occasion, probably in front of a really big crowd there, home game for the Roosters. So summarise things. Shit, we need to turn it around, and a statement win against a really hot Roosters team would be the absolute perfect ignition for a season that's been stuttering so far. But in my heart, like I've just said, going through that review, honestly, I think we've probably only got 3 or 4 players who match, if not slightly beat, out their opposition on current form and experience. Got some huge players, huge backs out there for them. That's going to make it really challenging for us under the high ball. Going to be challenging for us to compete against any of SJ's bombs. I feel like if we go down anything under 30 points, given their current form, and if we can get 2 or 3 tries, would feel a little bit of a successful loss, if you know what I mean. My biggest fear is we end up with 50 on us, and statistically that means you're gone. You've got no chance of winning the comp off the back of a 50-point loss, which we've already seen a couple of this season for other teams. So I think we're just going to really have to man up in defense and limit them as much as possible and try and keep them under 30. And I really can't see us scoring more than about 3 tries, if I'm completely honest. But who knows? A week over there, a week away from all the noise of the New Zealand media. Maybe the boys do finally click, having the energy of someone like Jazz coming in, showing a bit of line speed and aggression could make a difference, but who knows? Keep the faith, team. We'll get there. We're going to turn this around. We're too good not to, but whether it's this week, I can't say. Up the mighty Warriors. Let's go. Another Sunday game, so we've got a few more days to wait. Enjoy your week, team.